Good evening, everyone. My name is Liron Ozeri, and I am an undergraduate student at Yeshiva University's Stern College for Women. I'm also an organizer of tonight's event. On behalf of This World, the Values Network, and its student arm here at Cooper Union and New York University, it is my pleasure to welcome you tonight to a historic event. As a short overview, This World, the Values Network, is dedicated to promoting universal values of the Jewish faith and making the Jewish people a light unto the nations. As a leading part of that effort, we highlight Israel as the principal bastion and celebration of our Jewish values. Our organization is very much involved in Israel's defense. You may have seen the full-page ad that appeared in this past weekend's New York Times and yesterday's Washington Post with Professor Elie Wiesel, who was the last speaker we had on this podium. We alert the world to the threat of a nuclear Iran, and we will join America's lawmakers listening to the upcoming speech by Prime Minister Netanyahu. Before that ad, we had another, lambasting the United Nations for its appointment of Israel hater William Shabazz to lead its Gaza's investigation. William Shabazz resigned, and just yesterday, in his first interview since his resignation, he cited This World's ad campaign as one of the principal reasons for his stepping down. We also host events across New York and America. Just this past November, here on this stage, we hosted Elie Wiesel, the Nobel Peace Laureate, and Samantha Power, America's ambassador to the United Nations, along with Professor Noah Feldman of Harvard University. We are so happy that you are here tonight, and if you would like to get involved in our events and help us promote and defend the state of Israel on campus, please see me or any of the other volunteers after this event. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce the chief organizer of tonight's event, an undergraduate here at New York University, Shmuley Boteach.
Good evening, everyone. It means so much to me to see all of you here. You know, from the outset, this was never going to be, for me, any other event or panel or gathering. To me, this was a lot more. This event is a statement. It is a statement of Jewish and pro-Israel pride in the place where it is most needed in America, on the university campus. By coming to hear Israel's story, you are taking action against those who'd rather shut it out, those who'd rather spread lies and mistruths, those who every day present a false and hateful narrative that seeks to vilify the state of Israel and set against it the most baseless hatred. Today, you came to hear about how to fight the demonization of the Jewish state, and I'm confident that after this event, all of you will. Right now, you are not attendees. Right now, all of you, as you sit here in this great hall, are activists. I'd like to hear a great round of applause for the audience. Still, though, take no offense. We didn't come here for you. We all came here for the man sitting to my left, and it is my pleasure to introduce to you the Israeli ambassador to the United Nations, Ron Prosor. Ron Prosor is one of Israel's most senior diplomats, and it's easy to see why. Just turn on the news, and you will see him sword in hand in the belly of the beast, defending as he heeds to the Herculean task of defending Israel at the United Nations. Google his speeches, and you will see that his eloquence is unparalleled. He holds no words back in his strident defenses of the Jewish state. He is a man of courage, but he's also a man of wisdom. He is a man that can stand with a stalwart, stonewall strength against the torrents of hatred that stream forth from the United Nations. In an age where so many choose to lay low and stick their heads in the sand, Ron stands firmly on the front lines. He is one of the few, yet all too true, Maccabees of the Jewish people. Yet he's also a man of letters. When God told Noah to build the ark, he told him, Sohar ta selateva. Literally, this is translated as make a window for the ark. But Sohar could better be translated as shine, and Teva could better be translated as word, which gives us a new translation, which is make your words shine. And Ron Prosor is a man that makes his words shine. His speeches are filled with unforgettable lines. One of them, personal favorite, we actually printed on some of the signs we used to advertise this event. He said in a letter, "It takes a well of truth to water the seeds of peace." What words could better capture the problem we face today at the UN? Yet beyond being one of the best diplomats the state of Israel has, Ron Prosor is also one of the funniest. If the UN is a battleground, Ron's wit is his trusted weapon. In fact, during his time in England, he was called the king of the diplomatic quip. And just have a look at his analogies. After William Schabas, who we just heard about, was appointed to lead the UN Gaza investigation, Ron Prosor responded that choosing an outspoken critic of Israel to lead an investigation of that country makes about as much sense as asking Count Dracula to run a blood bank. When Iran and Syria were appointed to the Human Rights Council, Ron Prosor compared it to putting the Godfather in charge of the Witness Protection Program. And then when a delegate from Iran, the world's chief adversary of democracy and the Middle East's largest state sponsor of terrorism, when he bemoaned the influx of arms into the region, Prosor quipped in the Security Council that this is like the mafia complaining that the crime rate is high in New York City. Well, Ambassador Prosor, to honor your appearance tonight, I came up with an analogy of my own, one that will shed light on the struggle you embrace every day as you represent Israel in the United Nations. Audience, defending Israel at the United Nations is like defending your spot in line at a crowded Israeli supermarket. You will struggle, perhaps ferociously so, but you will forever draw strength from the knowledge that you are right. But again, this is about defending Israel, so. The truth is, this is all more than just a joke. Ron's warmth and his humor attest to his truly unique character. One might expect that after spending years surrounded by hostility, that it might make him a bitter man, that it would roughen the edges of his personality and grate away at his soul. But it hasn't. Not for Ron. His kind nature, his lively personality, and his bright attitude all have maintained their pristine condition. And there's only one way to explain it, and that is his complete and total confidence in the justice of Israel's cause. Israel is the Middle East's only democracy. It is an oasis of human rights in an arid desert of oppression. It is a place where men and women, people of every faith and people of no faith, people who are straight and people who are gay, all are treated equally under the law and are granted their God-given rights and freedoms. Israel is just, and as its representative, Ron Prosor will remain forever unfazed. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, there is my father, who will be conducting tonight's interview. It's always awkward for a son to have to introduce his own father, but here goes. My father told me to make this very brief. I'm glad he said so.
Well, if you have to elaborate, it's okay.
I managed to fit quite a lot into this small one page. Rabbi Shmuley Boteach, my father, lovingly known as America's Rabbi, is an international best-selling author of 30 books, syndicated columns, and an award-winning television host. And for 11 years, he served as the rabbi at Oxford University's L'chaim Society, which became the second largest student organization in the nearly 1,000-year history of Oxford. The organization became legend in its defense of Israel and hosted 6 Israeli prime ministers. Rabbi Shmuley, as he is popularly known, is the winner of the London Times Preacher of the Year competition in 1999, becoming the first rabbi to ever win. And the Jerusalem Post calls him one of the 50 most influential Jews in the world. The American media branded him as the most famous Orthodox Jew in the world. He is the father of 9 children, one of whom is me. Wasn't that bad, was it? Ladies and gentlemen, Rabbi Shmuley Boteach.
Thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for braving the cold and the lines to get inside. We had a lot of security tonight. We apologize that it was a bit more burdensome than we expected, but it's wonderful to see you all this evening at this august and important occasion. I'm going to get straight into the conversation. We advertised this to be a discussion about the global demonization of Israel. So Ron, yesterday we had and I told you on the phone today, I wanted to focus on three sectors. I wanted to focus on Europe, in between the Middle East and the United States as the other two sectors. Europe has been a death ground for Jews for a millennium. Yesterday there was desecration of Jewish gravestones in France. You were the Israeli ambassador to the Court of St. James in England, so you know Western Europe well. Murder of Jews in Belgium, murder of Jews in Copenhagen, a Jew in Copenhagen, murder of Jews in France. How bad is the situation in Europe?
Well, the situation in Europe is clearly bad. It's deteriorating because for a very long time, red lines were not drawn. And the problem is that not just anti-Semitism or terror acts do not they do not begin or they do not end with someone stabbing someone in a knife or shooting him. Those terror acts begin with incitement, with education, with the lack of education to tolerance and the understanding of someone else's religion, background, his own personality. And if you look at those terrorists that, conduct those terrorist activities in Europe, in Israel, maybe the terrorists hold the gun or hold the knife, but the ones behind whose hands are as bloody as the one holding the knife are the ones that incite, support, fund terrorism, and you have countries that do that. So you can see Iran, you can see Syria, you can see others in the domain that are behind this. So at the end, what we are seeing is something that began a long time ago, and the only way to turn the tide is through education. Education, education, education. Because if you look at that, we tend to marginalize them. Now, again, people don't say it publicly, but we have peace with both Egypt and Jordan. And we talk about anti-Semitism and things that are happening in Europe, which on European territory is absolutely, repetition of old hatreds from time immemorial. Lies and half-truths that people don't challenge and go after. And it's hard, because it seems that it's so off the charts. It's, people won't believe that. No, they do. But if you go back and you look at the Middle East, and I gave, Egypt and Jordan and the Arab world, the anti-Semitism is incredible. We don't have any territorial issues with Egypt or Jordan. Look, I think, at the last polls that Frank Luntz and others are polling. 97% and upwards nearly in every country. So the whole idea of Israel and Jews is mixed up. And at the end of the day, it's not just Jews. Jews are the beginning. Jews are the beginning. Look at what happens in the countries surrounding us with Christians. This is absolutely horrible.
And the mass slaughter of Christians by ISIS.
Yes, this is now the ISIS issues, but goes beyond that. In the Arab world, Saudi Arabia leads the interfaith force. There's not one synagogue, there's not one church in Saudi Arabia. People don't know that. So in the sense, this goes way and beyond this issue, and I think it's important for all of us to remember that the only way forward on this is education. Education for tolerance, education to understand that other people, especially minorities, have the right both to express themselves and conduct themselves.
Okay, so if I'm hearing correctly, if we speak about the demonization of Israel, you're connecting it with the demonization of the Jewish people as well.
Absolutely.
That one seems to follow from the other.
Yeah.
And that would mean, A, it's not something new, but it seems to be something very intense right now. That's why we're having this conversation. People are kind of shocked that Jews are afraid to live in Europe. People are shocked that a prime minister of Israel needs to get up now twice in 2 weeks and invite all European Jews to move to Israel. President Hollande said today that everyone said he was referring to Prime Minister Netanyahu. He disagrees completely. He said at the cemetery that Jews should not leave France. He said that France is compromised when the Jews leave. A lot of Jewish leaders have disagreed with Prime Minister Netanyahu and said if Jews leave France, let them leave because it's a Jewish dream as opposed to a European nightmare. Do Jews have a future in Europe?
The answer is yes, and it's the responsibility of each and every government in Europe to protect their own citizens. Be it the Jews, be it other minorities, this is crucial. I mean, Jews have citizens. They are as French can be. They're as British can be. In the sense, that's the responsibility of those governments. And that responsibility has to be dealt with every day, and especially in times like that. And the problem that we have to address that you touched upon is this issue of making a differentiation. Hence, okay, it's absolutely fine to criticize Israel, a democratic state, the only one in the Middle East, and then it's legitimate under that criticize, yes. But where is the line that criticism moves over from criticism to demonization and delegitimization? I'll give you examples. So it's, most people don't know. But for example, there's Article 4 in the Council on Human Rights that deals with human rights violations all over the world. Okay? All over the world, from North Korea, Syria, Libya, you name it. And there's a special Article 7 that singles out only one country in the world, and that is Israel. Now you go out to like-minded countries and say, hey, why single me out? Am I not good enough at least to be with a club of North Korea, Libya, and Syria? I mean, give me that credit. You want, I'll higher the bar. Why single me out? There's no good answers for it. But it's still part and parcel of what we have to do. This is absolutely demonizing and delegitimizing Israel. And it's creating, I would say that there, people talk about double standards. There are triple standards. There's one standard for democracies, one standard for dictatorships, and a special standard for Israel. That Israel or no other country can attain, because the bar is absolutely impossible. Now, from an Israeli perspective, we in Israel look and say, hey, we are encountering phenomena that Western democracies have yet to encounter, or other parts of the world. Do we always get it right? No, but by God, we're trying. I remind everyone people forget. We in Israel began checking people at airports 25 years ago. What did people say? Oy vey, human rights, how can you do this? Intrusion of privacy, schmivacy. Look what happens in every airport today. It began 25 years ago. Woof, how much ink was taken on what Israel is doing. And I could go on. So we are on the front line and saying, hey, don't you guys understand that we are on the front line today fighting those phenomena that you are now, before our eyes, having to encounter? It's ISIS, it's Iran, it's the disintegration of nation states around us, it's the incitement. Those things we live with in the region as the only democratic country, and maintaining those values that we all cherish and are brought up with is something that I'm very proud that we can do, where we have terrorist acts nearly, every week.
So Israel is faced with a unique set of circumstances that the world seems to have almost no sympathy for. And you're saying that not only is Israel judged by a higher standard, it's judged by an impossible standard.
Impossible, sir.
A standard that no nation can reach. So it's a standard that is designed to fail. Hence the demonization, delegitimization. The standards are put at, the bar is so high that they're designed to make the Jewish state look bad and to destroy its name.
Yeah, it's like I said, and usually the argumentation to that is, oh, come on, but we hold you to a different standard because, you're different. We don't look at you like the others. That's usually the explanation of why creating a standard which is really on the verge of unattainable. I mean, I look like a saint, but we're not saints. And the challenges of little Israel. Little Israel in that ocean and sea around us of animosity. Look, Israel is so small, I was thinking today that the distance between our embassy on 42nd Street and Times Square is the distance between Nahal Oz and Gaza. This is the distance we're talking about. This is the proximity, 15 kilometers. And we are out there and showing. I mean, I'm looking in the past. I've been for 30 years. So look at this. When President Sadat from Egypt came over to Israel, surprise, surprise. On the Israeli side, there's Prime Minister Menachem Begin, right wing, horns on his head in parentheses. Less than 3 years, full peace agreement between Israel and Egypt. Territorial, we turned, the last centimeter to Egypt. The same thing with the, former king of Jordan, King Hussein. King Hussein is a good example to what I want to say, because King Hussein, there was this event that took place where a crazy Jordanian soldier killed 7 girls near the Jordan River. And King Hussein, I think, was with his plane in Spain. Took the plane back, went to every bereaved family.
Jewish families.
Paid condolences. And it didn't make a difference where you stood in Israel, left or right politically. You said, this guy we can respect. This guy really is someone we can make peace with. In contrast to that, look at Abu Mazen. Abu Mazen, when we released those horrible terrorists with blood on their hands. Celebrations, Ia Fantasia, naming football stadiums on their names. This is something you look at it and say, what message are you giving your own society? What message? Again, it doesn't make a difference where you stand politically. This is the message that you're giving. You hail them. This is a no in all categories. And the world doesn't really say anything about that. So I don't mind, you can point fingers at Israel, but at least look at this and say, hey, there's something absolutely wrong in this picture.
As opposed to Israel, who when Baruch Goldstein's had a shrine built to his memory, it was destroyed, taken apart by the IDF.
Absolutely.
Okay, Abu Mazen, Mahmoud Abbas, spoke from that lectern used by Abraham Lincoln. He came to national prominence, 1858, condemned slavery. And Abu Mazen spoke from this podium in September, spoke to a capacity audience, got many standing ovations, and this is what he said. I made a prayer for an America that is a real friend of Israel. Real friends don't let their friends drive drunk. So too, a real friend of Israel would not let them engage in the widespread killing of women and children, including bombing United Nations schools and hospitals, such as we saw in Gaza. A real friend, and if America is a real friend of Israel, it would not let it routinely arrest, beat, and jail without charges Palestinian children, which has been well documented by journalists. So he's saying that Israel indiscriminately bombs Palestinians, indiscriminately jails children, And then he added, the 8th commandment says, thou shalt not steal, and that the Jews have stolen Palestinian land. That was supposed to be a peace speech that he got here. There was one small protest out of his side of speech. I can commend my son Mendy for doing that, the only protest that evening. Everyone else gave him standing ovations. So do you see that as the demonization of Israel on campus, where students can actually give a standing ovation to those kinds of statements?
Well, first and foremost, let's begin with the fact that Abu Mazen is in his 10th year of his 5 years presidency. It's quite unique, I have to say. I'm sure that certain Republicans or Democrats would love this. I mean, stay in office. Again, no one says a word about those issues. I don't think he put his finger, his toe in Gaza since I headed Israel's Foreign Service for 3.5 years. That's where I lost most of my hair. But since 2007, I don't think Abu Mazen stepped into Gaza. And he knows why. I mean, presenting himself as the president of the Palestinian Authority without being in Gaza. A so-called peace-loving state, which is in a joint government with Hamas, an internationally recognized terrorist organization. And I heard them at the United Nations, both in 2012, 2013. Just to hear the speeches, it's vile, it's poisonous, there's no bridging or looking at something. So, yes, you can say that, this is certain platforms for him to attack, but the message, like I said, the message that he's giving through incitement on, driving over Jews. Jews are taking the Temple Mount. People don't know the facts. Moshe Dayan, after 1967, Moshe Dayan, with one eye, could see much further than others with two. Basically said the Temple Mount, is going to be controlled by the Waqf. There were arrangements made. Israel is keeping those arrangements. And the incitement to call for religious wars on something which is, again, a blatant lie, is, it shows you what this leader, supposed to be a leader, is doing to his own people. I don't hear those debates inside the Palestinian Authority, of internal debates, saying, hey, what can we do? How do we bring this together? The internal debates that say, here we can compromise, here we have to stand on something. I don't see that. In Israel, you see that internal debate. We give each other heart attacks. We go at each other's throats. I want that debate to take part in the Palestinian Authority. But what do I see? I see on Palestinian TV, I see Mickey Mouse being put, with explosives. Usually you see Mickey Mouse, you smile, or Ben and Jerry. I mean, and that's on Palestinian TV. This incitement, this calling for days of rage, this is absolutely doing exactly the opposite of what you want to do if you want to really live in peace with other people, the Jewish people.
So we see incitement in Europe. We see incitement from the Palestinian Authority. We saw incitement from this podium right in this stage where almost no one protested it at a world-renowned university with the largest Jewish student undergraduate population in the United States. He said all this. There was almost no protest, with the exception of the small protest that most of my kids ended up going to, including 12-year-olds. You see this every day at the UN. You see the lack of response to that incitement. And you gave a speech in November of this year that went viral on the internet. I was in Europe somewhere with my wife when someone came over to me and said to me, I don't know if you've heard of the Israeli ambassador to the UN, Ron Prosor, but he gave a speech for the ages. It was much quoted. I highlighted so much of it that it would take most of my night just quoting from it, so I'm not going to do that. I'm going to quote two parts, but I'm going to encourage you all to go and hear it. You hear this kind of thing all the time. And your response was, I stand before you to tell the truth. Of the 300 million Arabs in the Middle East and North Africa, less than 0.5% are truly free, and they are all citizens of Israel. There were 700,000 Palestinians displaced in the 1948 war, 850,000 Jews. Why do we talk about the Palestinians and not the Jews? You said because all of those Jews were absorbed by the state of Israel, whereas almost none of the Palestinians were absorbed. They're used as political tools till today in refugee camps. And you said that the UN has never passed one resolution condemning the treatment of Palestinians in places like Syria where they're being slaughtered, or in countries where they're not allowed to have occupations and they're second-class citizens. So when you see all this, how do you handle it, being in the UN every day and seeing this? We read about it through a newspaper, we see a report on the news, but you're there, you hear Mahmoud Abbas accuse Israel of genocide right in front of you, lie to the world. A genocide is where you target an ethnic population for extermination. There is not one person on earth that would ever characterize Israel's war in Gaza, which came about because of thousands of rockets fired at civilian populations and targeted military strikes to stop those rockets, as a genocide. It's impossible to even say that, but he did say it. So how do you react to this demonization, this growing global demonization, as someone who has arguably Israel's toughest job representing it at the UN?
Well, first I say, you don't really have to be a rocket scientist to understand that if rockets fall on your head, you're allowed to defend yourself. I mean, on the issue of Hamas. The other part is that at the United Nations, it's a wonderful vantage point to see the world. And there are things that are, sometimes, I call it the theater of the absurd. You see the North Korean representative talk for 50 consecutive minutes. I understand he can't talk at home, but why, bother us, with such long speeches? You see things that are happening today in the Arab world which are absolutely dramatic. You see the Saudi ambassador, going over to the podium, pointing towards the Iranian ambassador and saying, you tried to assassinate my ambassador, Abdul Jubeir, in Georgetown, in Washington, D.C., in a wonderful restaurant called Cafe Milano. That's two wrongs on one shot. And the Iranian ambassador stands up and bashes the Saudi ambassador. The Saudi ambassador goes after the Syrian ambassador, Bashar Jafri. Bashar Jafri can stand for 50 consecutive minutes and lie without end. I think when he snores, he lies. But this time round, the Kuwaiti and the Bahraini ambassador call him on this. So you sit there, and of course I sit and say, continue, gentlemen, continue. I mean, this isn't bad. So you have that. You also have the difference between what you see, Shmuley, above the radar screen and under the radar screen. Above the radar screen, most countries that know the truth cannot speak the truth. Why? Because of the numbers. There are 22 countries of the Arab League. There are 57 countries of the Organization of Islamic Countries. And there are 120-something countries of the non-alignment group. Now, if you want to be voted in to any position or every committee, you need that majority. And I bring you back 6 or 7 years ago when Canada wanted to enter the Security Council. Canada wanted to enter the Security Council, and they needed 2/3 of the General Assembly, 129 votes. They didn't get those, had nothing to do with Israel because of their stance, the moral compass on issues that pertain to human rights, human dignity, democratic structures. They didn't make it.
If you speak out, you lose the support of the non-aligned countries?
If you speak out, they are not with you. They vote against you. So what you see above the radar screen is not what happens under the radar screen. Under the radar screen, there's huge respect for Israel. In countries that, go from the former Soviet Union to Africa, to South America, to the Pacific Islands, there's huge, now you'd say to me, God, Ron, what have you drank? Whiskey, how can you say that? How can you substantiate that statement? So I'll substantiate it for you. Part of my strategy is to present to the world what Israel is all about. So when we ran an Israeli resolution on entrepreneurship for development, worked on it for nearly a year and a half, the end of the day, with all the numbers that I just told you, making those rounds to each and every country, 141 countries out of 193, some who don't have diplomatic ties with us, raised their hands because they felt this was something important for their own societies. By the way, the Arabs and the Palestinians all voted against it, tried to do everything they could because it's demonizing and delegitimizing Israel. Israel is not allowed to be looked upon as a regular member in the family of nations. So you see that respect under the radar screen, especially with people who had some interaction with Israel and saw what Israel is all about. So we have to continue to do that, to present to the world, beyond those lies and half-truths that we have to, what Israel is all about. Tikkun olam, drip irrigation, solar energy, sending eye doctors to the remotest places, sending, airplanes over to Haiti to aid countries and people in the worst times. And this is what we're all about, because this is what Israel and the Jewish people are all about.
But how could that really work? Okay, that was a poorly timed question. I should have waited for the applause. But Ron, will that really work? On the one hand, you're saying there's this global demonization, and we're all witnessing it. And if you're Jewish, you're feeling uncomfortable these days, very uncomfortable. You're kind of astonished and shocked. Parenthetically, when Elie Wiesel sat here with me and Samantha Power was in the front row, having just introduced him, he actually said that he feels that his life is the closing of the circle. He started life under the Nazis in Hungary and Auschwitz, and then he thought this stuff would never happen again. And now at 86, he's seeing a resurgence of it, and he doesn't think there's any way to combat it, that it's almost intrinsic, that it's congenital, it's inborn. And I was shocked to hear this. This is the Nobel Peace Laureate, most famous Jewish personality in the world, one of the most respected men alive, a veritable conscience of mankind. And what he was kind of saying was, I don't want to quote him, but based on his argument that it's inborn, you can tell the world that Israel has drip irrigation. You can tell the world that Israel launched these rescue missions in Haiti, which I personally witnessed 3 days after the earthquake, when the stench of death was so bad that I couldn't breathe in Port-au-Prince. Will they still hate Israel? Or you think that this message can actually get through, that the job you're doing in communicating this message will ultimately break through?
We have to communicate that, and we have to do the utmost that we can, which we always do, is to reach out to our neighbors to achieve peace. We have to do that simultaneously. Will the world acknowledge that? I'm not sure, but we can't stop trying. We can't stop trying because at the end of the day, we have to reach out with one hand to anyone who would make peace with us, but with the other hand, keep the shield of David very, very close to our chests, because only a strong Israel, a secure Israel, can achieve peace in that amazing surrounding that we are with. So, from my point of view, we have to continue and continue. And Elie Wiesel, who, I have huge admiration for, when he talks, I sometimes think, of this Pastor Niemöller, who said, when they came over to take the socialists, I didn't stand up because I wasn't a socialist. When they came to take the communists, I didn't stand up because I wasn't a communist. When they came up to take the Jews, I didn't stand up because I wasn't a Jew. When they came to take me, there was no one to stand up for me. And what we see now taking place in Europe is, if they go after journalists and characterists, if you don't stand up for freedom of expression, if you don't stand up for freedom of the press, don't be surprised at the end that the values that we all cherish, that people fought for, lost their lives for, the values that are part and parcel of our own identity, if we do not really fight for that every day, we're going to lose. But I believe we can win this. We can win this. The challenges against us are tough, You could see the storm and the waves, and you can see it, what's Daesh or ISIS? This is absolutely incomprehensible to anyone. Chopping off heads, burning people alive. And we have to call it. We have to say what it is. And to say this is radical Islam and not look us around. This is what the problem is. And not shy away of saying it, because when we say that, radical Islam, because they're killing more Muslims than they're killing anyone else. But if you don't diagnose and are unable to call it and say it, you won't find a cure to that. Now, this is a huge threat to all of us, including Muslims and, moderate Muslims who really have a completely different way in the way they see life.
Okay, having focused on anti-Semitism in Europe, which has 1,000, perhaps a 2,000-year history, having focused on the kind of incitement that's coming from radical Islam, and you said it's important to identify it as radical Islam.
Absolutely.
There's a conference tomorrow being held at the White House by President Obama where those words aren't actually being used in the conference, and that's being discussed in the media right now. Let's talk now about right here, NYU campus. When I was in Europe, in Amsterdam, when Prime Minister Netanyahu speaks in Congress March 3rd, it is either the exact 70th anniversary I mentioned before of the murder of Anne Frank, the most famous victim of the Holocaust, or we don't know exactly because she died the first week of March 1945, we don't know exactly which day in Bergen-Belsen. My wife and I were just in Amsterdam for the commemoration, organized by Ron Feiner, who's right here, so thank you, Ron. And I spoke to the Jewish community of Amsterdam, and I said, well, thank God we don't have in the United States what you have here, because the huge army presence outside of shuls, etc., and it's not as bad here. And they said, a guy stood up and said, that's ridiculous. You're not being fair. You're letting your country off the hook. Now, I love America, and I kind of was offended by the question. He said, your university campuses are like our European cities. Your students are intimidated. Israel's being completely attacked. Now, if the UN, I kind of get it. If countries have a particular agenda, and part of it is against Israel, they're going to voice it, no matter how unfair, no matter how ridiculous, and you call it the theater of absurd, and that brilliant Huffington Post column you wrote recently. But campuses, universities, these are supposed to be higher bastions of learning. These are supposed to be ivory towers of academia. And yet we are seeing such an assault on campus that it's shocking. Every day I get another email from a Hillel director, a Chabad director, Stanford, UC Davis, UC Berkeley. California is really out of control. But here at NYU, so many other campuses, BDS resolutions passing. UCLA just went 5,000 Jewish students. BDS passed. UC Davis, we just saw swastikas there. Do you understand how it's happening at campuses? I mean, how is it happening here? And you spoke at many of these campuses in the UK when you were ambassador there, where it's far worse, where your successor, Daniel Taub, tried to give a lecture at the University of Edinburgh and had about 200 police officers protecting him like a little army, and even then couldn't speak. Or Michael Oren, your colleague who was ambassador to the United States, who couldn't give a speech at Irvine. So why is it happening on campus?
Why is it happening on campus? Because in campus you have young students who look at the world. We both remember the age. I think I ran after too many girls on campus instead of focusing on world affairs. But
I was in an all-male yeshiva.
But what has really happened is that there's this, everything is suddenly open for debate. You lose the issue, okay, what is fact, what is fiction, what can you argue about? But suddenly facts blur away from, and I don't mind any argumentation on anything, but when you begin to change the facts in order to make, that's I think a problem that the academy, on the academic, has to really go back to basics in the sense, and then lead from there. I look at it as maybe the biggest challenge that the state of Israel has today, which means that each and every one of the students is on the front line defending Israel. Because if you look at it, in the past, they tried to eliminate Israel through military means, the different wars. This didn't work out. We're strong enough to defend ourselves. We are strong enough today. Then military means didn't work out, so they tried the academic and the economic boycotts. You remember the Arab economic boycotts? So there was military, there's economic. And today, what one tries to do is to brand Israel as an international pariah on the international level, and in a sense, go out against the values that we all cherish, that connect between Israel and the Jewish diaspora, and hitting us in the soft belly. You see that with all those commissions, you know, the Shabbos Commission, we'll talk about it in a while, of changing the whole debate and trying to demonize and delegitimize Israel. And it's like, if I had to give you an analogy, it's like Chinese torture. Drop, 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 which has an accumulated effect. Every drop is just a drop. But if you don't challenge it, and it's lies and half-truths on an array of issues. So it's, from my point of view, this is maybe the biggest challenge that the state of Israel and the Jewish people have today. And in that challenge, each and every one of the people here and outside are on the front line. And the front lines are tough, because you have to know your facts, you have to be able to stand up and be proud in really giving answers with all the problematics in it of showing how Israel is trying to defend itself every day, and doing that, to my mind, in an amazing way.
Do you think that's an obligation of a student on campus? I mean, students want to have fun, they want to party, they want to get an education. Suddenly they're burdened with this Jewish thing that they have to stand up for a country that is under global international assault. Is it their obligation?
I think I would call it, it's not just the obligation to the state of Israel, but it's an obligation to the Jewish people. Because the state of Israel is the nation state of the Jewish people. It's the nation state of the Jewish people which allows. Thank you. This is where we come from. This is what we yearned for years. Eretz Israel, Jerusalem, the capital of the Jewish people. And this is our heart. So I think this is an obligation that is important to everyone personally, to his family, to his children and grandchildren. Where were you when they tried to demonize and delegitimize Israel? If you're not on the front line, standing guard, Al chomotayich Yerushalayim etzavti shomrim, on your walls, Jerusalem, I've put sanctuaries. If you're not out there, you should be here defending the values of the state of Israel and the Jewish state.
Well, let me be candid, and whenever I host a speaker, someone as prestigious as the position you occupy and the personality that you are, I never want to put them in an awkward position, especially you're a diplomat.
Now I know that I'm put in an awkward position.
Exactly. That was just kind of
this is
to take the sting out of the. But Ron, do you think enough is?
I'll tell you.
Yeah.
Shmuley, it's like, people begin to say, as a friend of Israel, I say, oh, very. Why don't you be friend with someone else? Yes.
Right. Well, Ron, as your close personal friend, do you think enough's being done? Is the American Jewish community being done? Because I kind of look at what's happening on campus, and I was on the front lines at Oxford beginning in 1988 when it first started, and it just hit us like a tsunami. No one was ready for this. Yeah. And now I see how badly we've lost, and we can't lose, but we're not winning now. Are we doing enough?
No, we never do enough. I do not do enough. I don't think my team does enough, although they work day and night. And they're here, they're probably smiling, saying, oh my God, what else do you want us to work? We're working weekends, so, So I can't say that we're doing enough. We're not doing enough in campuses. We're not. Sometimes it's easier to say, hey, just let's look away. It'll go away. The point is, no, it's not going away. And you have to confront that because it challenges who you are, what you are. So if it doesn't catch up to you now, it'll catch up to you some years away. And it's something that absolutely one has to do much more on campuses, and it's tough. It's not easy to be the odd man or the odd woman out, always, being pointed fingers at. But I'm saying this because I know what Israel is all about. And I told you, I walk the corridors of the United Nations, tall and proud, knowing who I represent and what I represent in this family of nations.
Okay, I'm looking at the clock because we're going to be taking questions, but final little group of questions very quickly. And let me actually follow on from what you just said about the UN. So you're walking down the corridors of the United Nations, and there's the ambassador from Iran walking by. Do you guys say hello? Is it two ships passing in the night? How does that work?
Okay, first, Israel in the United Nations, we are under the eyes. So on my right, always, is the ambassador of Italy. On the left is Ireland, Iraq, and Iran. Now, the Iranian ambassador, every time I just pass through his seat, he moves 2 steps back because a picture of him and me is not exactly...
it's not going to get his kid as a shidduch.
Yeah, that won't help him in his health in Tehran.
Yeah.
So, with him, there's no real connection. With the Syrian ambassador, I don't talk. But with others, nearly everyone out there, we talk. We don't kiss each other in the middle of the room, but we talk, and we talk with countries that Israel does not have diplomatic ties with. And we do that a lot, and there are conversations there. And it's really interesting because in the General Assembly, we have our group, like I told you. This group moves together every year because the Secretary General, takes a name of a country. Let's say he chooses Guatemala. So Guatemala moves into pole position at the UN, and everyone else organizes himself alphabetically. But we always are with our team out there. So
you and Iran are always...
We and Iran are always stuck there together. But I want to tell you something about Iran. Again, I was out in New York, and I came to a concert by Rita. Rita, is a major singer in Israel, a diva. She comes from Iran. And I heard her sing in Farsi and in Hebrew in New York. I said, hey, everyone talks about Iran nuclear weapons program. Hey, I'm going to bring Rita to sing at the UN. Like Simon and Garfunkel, bridge over troubled water. We have nothing against the Iranian people. They have a problematic leadership. It took us nearly a year. We had the Secretary General, the President of the General Assembly, 121 countries, and Rita appeared in the General Assembly singing in Farsi and in Hebrew and in English, and they still talk about it today at the United Nations. So this is...
And I'm assuming the Iranian ambassador was on bass guitar that night, right?
I'm sure that he peeked in to listen, because the music was good. By the way, she's a big hit in Iran.
Really?
Yeah.
Out of Israel?
Out of Israel.
Okay, so the final question, and then we're going to go to questions. Mr. Ambassador, the United States is about to hear through its legislature the Prime Minister of Israel. He'll be speaking at AIPAC March 2nd. He'll be speaking at before Congress morning of Tuesday, March 3rd. Controversial speech. People say it's dividing Democrats and Republicans, politicizing Israel. How important is this speech? Clearly, the Prime Minister is taking a risk by his own admission. He understands that it can rile up people who would otherwise be friends. He clearly believes that this is of monumental importance. How serious is the threat from Iran? Because till now we spoke about demonization, global demonization, that can lead to terror attacks. Iran seems to be an order of magnitude greater risk to Israel. How important is this speech? How serious is the threat?
So I won't, defer using the fact that I'm Israel's ambassador to the United Nations, not to the United States, on remarking about the political issue, but I want to focus on Iran. Iran is the biggest threat that we see for the strategic environment. It goes beyond Israel. This is a huge threat to the Saudis, the Gulfis, to the whole strategic environment. And it's a combination of an Ayatollah regime with delivery systems, and the icing on the cake is the nuclear weapons. Now, if you look at Iran, Iran is you would say, okay, what has changed in Iran lately? Have they stopped being a human rights abuser? Iran is hanging gays, stoning women, putting people, journalists in jail, and the amount of executions in Iran every month is staggering. So in the sense, this regime has not changed. They are continuing with shipments of arms and missiles to Hezbollah, helping Bashar al-Assad, the only ophthalmologist I know who cuts the vision of his own people every day, with money, weapons, and missiles. This is a regime that, funds terror. This is a horrific regime. Now, if I had to give you an analogy, the Iranians are, it's as if they have a nuclear machine in the garage. And they're saying to the world, you know what, we'll move the switch from on to off. We know you don't trust us, so you can come and look at this nuclear machine. But don't touch the engine, don't touch the gear. Why? So if we decide, we can move the switch from off to on very quickly. So when the world is going to look at that, the other parts of the nuclear machine, the delivery systems and the weaponization, that no one looks at. And the problem is that the Iranians, until now, have lied consecutively for years. They've taken the amazing negotiators. They're not just carpet makers, but they're carpet weavers. They take every red line, they divide it into 10 pink lines, and they pass every pink line. But because it's a pink line, it doesn't merit a response. Before you say Jack Robinson, they're way beyond the red line. Now, we have seen this regime in action. We've seen what they're doing. We've seen them stand up publicly and call, they enlarge the vocabulary of the English language. They call for the eradication, the extermination, the erasing out of the map, and the liquidation of the state of Israel. Every day. The only country in the family of nations that publicly stands up and says that. And I'm not talking about, we are the little Satan. The United States is the big Satan. The Brits are also out there, all the countries I served in. So Iran is a huge, huge danger because there's a combination of what they say, what they want to do, and the way they're implementing it. So that combination of their intentions and how they're implementing it, the world, has to stand up. Has to stand up very, very strongly, not to allow Iran to have nuclear weapons, because that's, a problem not just for Israel or the Middle East, but a huge threat to the entire world.
And Israel's objection to this deal that may be done seems to be that two things. That number one, in 1938 with Munich, what you had was Britain and France negotiating the security or even the dismemberment of Czechoslovakia without any Czech representative even present at those negotiations, and which is kind of absurd. And secondly, that Henry Kissinger's testimony before the Senate Armed Services Committee, this deal will leave Iran with a nuclear capability within a 1-year breakout towards a nuclear weapon. And we're relying on UN observers to close that window of a single year between the enrichment of uranium where they're at today versus having a bomb.
The only important thing that I want to say is that, you know, one should make it a point, and the president said it, and everyone under him, you know, it's better to have no deal than a bad deal. And I think this is the message, and I think in this, at least, there's an agreement between the P5+1, which is Germany, all the permanent representatives, and Germany, which is part of the negotiation team. And we have to stick by that, because when we were unified, when the world was unified with sanctions against Iran, it made a difference. They began to see that there's a price tag for them continuing in a certain way. And we have to keep that pressure going.
Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go to questions. From the time Abraham Lincoln spoke here, and then the two of us, beards have been very important at the Cooper Union Great Hall. So maybe I should ask someone with some whiskers on there. But we're going to go to questions. There's only 2 rules. Be polite. It could be on any subject, but within reason. Try to stick to the subject we're talking about. Number 1, be polite. Number 2, ask it in the form of a question. If you want to deliver an alternate speech, there'll be a time after everyone leaves this hall. You can come to this podium and you can give your speech. So, and we'll try to see people in the audience. It's a little bit dark out there. Yes, go ahead, sir, in the back.
Can you
speak louder, please?
Can't hear you.
Oh, here's the mic. Here's the mic. Sorry about that.
Gregory, I'm majoring in math and I'm minoring in Hebrew Judaic Studies at NYU. And I have a question, Mr. Ambassador. What's the most important thing that students or somebody like myself should know about Israel?
The most what?
Most important thing that a student at NYU should know about Israel.
I think the most important thing that you should know about Israel is how open a society Israel is, and how amazingly this boils down to the core families in Israel, where the debates on the political side can range from complete left to complete right. The sounds of family members going at each other, everyone feeling that they have the complete truth, challenging the existing paradigms nearly about everything. This, I think, is the most important thing, because this, as a base, gives everything else to societies. So, an open society where women are equal, more than equal, when women control all 3 branches of government, a country which has an Arab Israeli as a Supreme Court judge. This is what you know. This is what Israel is about, and as a mathematics students, this is a simple equation to solve. What goes after that?
Okay, thank you for your question. Next question, please. Let's go. He just spoke about women. Let's go to a woman, please. Sorry. Okay, right over there with the glasses. Go ahead, please.
Hi.
Yes.
I have a quick question regarding the fact that I'm actually in high school right now. What are some things that might be beneficial to me as a high schooler to help educate and involve my community in Israel advocacy?
Can you
Sorry, should I say that
I have
again?
a problem hearing.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll hold the mic closer. My name is Stacey Pinkowitz, and I'm an MZ teen intern with the International Israel Education Organization, Stand With Us.
Stand With Us, right.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we're co-sponsoring this.
Yes,
That's
excellent
awesome.
organization,
All
yes.
right. As a high schooler, what are some things that I can do to help involve and educate my kind of home community in Israel advocacy?
Well, again, I try and focus on what I answered on, the first time, because I can, of course, say, knowing the history of the Jewish people, the establishment of the State of Israel, through the years, the way, we reached out to our neighbors. But in essence, on the high school side, I want you to really present the Israeli society with all its diversification. The establishment of the State of Israel, with refugees coming in, being integrated, this boiling pot of amazing cultures and backgrounds that created this diverse and buzzy society that I'm very, very proud of every day. And I see my children, 2 boys and a girl, and I see their friends, and I'm telling you, when I look at them, God, they're smarter than us, they're, clever, they really, you can be very, very proud of, the young generation in Israel. And I think this is what people should, the tolerance of accepting minorities, others. This is what I'd like you to present in high school.
Go ahead, sir.
My name is Ira Nadler. I live in New York. I noticed in the press that on the 21st of January, the Russian foreign minister was in Tehran signing a mutual defense agreement with Iran, Russia with Iran. Of all the countries in the world, Russia decided that its interests are aligned with Iran. And the foreign minister of Russia in the press said, we're signing this agreement because America and the West are interfering with our policies. The alignment of Russia with Iran sends a fear up my spine. And I haven't heard a word in the press of America's reaction, or any congressman's reaction, or any Israeli reaction, or any reaction in the entire world of Russia and Iran signing an alliance.
Okay, so let's have the ambassador respond to that. What do you think about this security arrangement signed by Russia and Iran?
Yeah, look, Russia lately has some interesting bedfellows. I mean, Syria, Bashar Assad, the Iranians, but you should see it in, I think, a bigger frame of Russia trying to, in realpolitik, to go into places where the United States or the West have less access to, in order to create, leverages. So I absolutely agree with you, but I'd like to say something that very few people know, that the dialogue between Israel and Russia on the Iranian issue is quite unique in 3 different elements. When we come to talk to the Russians about the Iran nuclear weapons program, they take us seriously because they feel that we have good intelligence, that they'd like to find the methods and sources which we don't reveal. They don't see us as future competitors on the Iranian market, which they see others if they pull back, which gives us credibility in the arguments that we make. And the third element, that they have this interesting, odd responsibility that they feel towards 1 million Russian Jews immigrating from Russia over to Israel. So surprisingly, they listen to us. On some things they took their time to move. I'll give you an example. On Bushehr, the nuclear reactor, they took their time. They had some technical problems on bringing certain stuff and equipment, and they had problems, and the ships and things didn't come, didn't go. So they listened to us. The problem is that they are now, not just now, a couple of years are doing stuff which, like you said, is warring not just for you, for us, and I think the national interests of not just Israel, but the whole region. So they're not exactly constructive.
Okay, just 1 second, please. We want to go all around the room. Go ahead, please, in the red. You're wearing red, that's you. Yes, go ahead, please. Did you not know that you put on a red sweater this morning?
I wasn't sure I got this quickly. Anyway, when you spoke about college campuses, you indicated we're not doing enough and it's an obligation for Israel and the Jewish people. Couldn't agree more. Unfortunately, I don't know that the college students necessarily agree. What can we do for those that are apathetic and really just don't care?
Okay, so you said that the students could be doing more, and he said that he's not sure that all the current students agree, but what could be done about students who seem very apathetic and just don't care?
What can you do? Motivate them. Motivate them, give them courage to stand up. I think it's important to explain that if you leave that the way it is, a vacuum usually fills with something else which is worse. So from my point of view, motivation, education.
Yeah, and a sense of the urgency, Ambassador, right?
Urgency,
I mean, it's like I go around these campuses and I say to myself, do the students know how bad it is? And some of the battles we have in trying to motivate students, we keep on hearing back, oh, it's not so bad. If a BDS movement means, a BDS vote at a campus means that the Jewish students, numbering in the thousands normally at these universities, couldn't stop 50, 100 students from passing that motion, like you said, because they just didn't care. And we all think, it's no big deal, it's just a vote. The people are dying in France now, and they're dying in Copenhagen, they're dying in Belgium, and I was just in Europe speaking to a few hundred people, me and my wife, and I asked them in Amsterdam, how many people here would leave? Do you feel insecure, you're afraid you'd leave if you could leave tomorrow? And nearly all the hands go up. And this is a Holocaust survivor community where 80% of the people had their grandparents slaughtered in gas chambers during the war, so they came back even then, but they want to leave now. It's getting pretty bad. I mean, how do we motivate the students to give a damn that the Jewish state is having its name destroyed in places of higher learning throughout the United States of America? I mean, how do you convince them that the first Jewish state in 2,000 years, which if it had existed, Anne Frank, whose best friend I sat with in Amsterdam last Sunday, Jacqueline von Marson, who is still alive and who's mentioned in the diary of Anne Frank. And Anne Frank writes her a letter in the diary saying, I'm sorry, Jacqueline, that I can't say goodbye to you. We went into hiding. And Jacqueline would only read that in 1947, once Anne Frank had died in Bergen-Belsen. But she would be alive if Israel existed, and millions of people would be alive today if Israel existed. And where would these Jews from France go if Israel didn't exist? And what does it take to motivate us? People like the ambassador put up with this stuff every day in its hornet's nest when you hear people like Ahmadinejad calling for Israel's annihilation in front of the UN, right in the heart of New York City. And we can't stop this stuff. And I gotta tell you, it's embarrassing. The Jews control the media, the Jews control the banks, we control nothing. If you can't stop a man calling for your annihilation in a city with 2.5 million Jews, then you control precisely nothing. Do you know that here at NYU, Dubai has an official policy? I know we're at Cooper Union, but there's a lot of NYU students here, and the two are kind of commingled whenever there's an event at the Great Hall. Do you know that NYU Dubai doesn't allow Israeli students to apply or Israeli academics to teach? That's on their official website. And do you know how much Jewish money comes to the university here? And is it a lot to ask of the philanthropists who support NYU, some of whom are my dearest friends, great men, like the founder of Birthright, a truly great man, Michael Steiner, who shared this podium with me right here in this hall several times, a great man. We must ask all of these great men that when they give money to this institution or come as students, you're going to allow NYU to discriminate against Israelis? Could you imagine if NYU Dubai... Can you imagine if NYU Dubai had an official policy that black people or Indian, people from India or from Pakistan couldn't apply? It would be a disgrace, but we allow this. And we brought the ambassador here so you could see a lion of the Jewish people, someone who fights every day. And to be honest, I couldn't do it. And to be honest, ambassador, I could not do it. I'll tell you why. Because, you know, one of the most interesting things for me this evening in this interview, honestly, was you are calm like the Buddha. You have a unique capacity to defend the Jewish state. Now, I didn't say...
I need to munch something.
No, I didn't say you look like the Buddha. No, it's a phenomenal talent to absorb that much hatred and to remain, I think my son Mendy really captured it in his introduction, to remain without any jagged edges. It's a talent and it's a blessing, and we're grateful to you for it. And I see why we're so lucky to have you. Wait. Last.
I'm a professor in NYU, and I want to make 2 comments here because you said something.
What is your name, please?
My name is Avi Ullman. I'm a professor of chemistry in Polytechnic School of Engineering. Number 1, NYU in Abu Dhabi, NYU in Abu Dhabi. The guy who started the chemistry there is a professor from Beersheba, who has dual citizenship, Israeli and
dual citizenship.
Number 2, NYU has a branch in Tel Aviv University. They have a building 2 blocks from the Accademia LeMusica. Okay? NYU is organizing in 2 weeks a biology meeting in Tel Aviv University. NYU is sending students from Shanghai as international students to Tel Aviv. I don't want to create the impression that NYU is anti-Israel. On the contrary, I'm working with NYU and with the vice president of global programs in NYU to create an exchange program for Israeli students and American students with Tel Aviv University. Thank you.
By the way, it's a different subject, but nothing that I said is contradicted by what you said. I am very happy that they have programs in Israel. It is true, however, that NYU Abu Dhabi does not allow people who only have an Israeli passport, correct? That is correct. It's on their website. That is the official policy. It's unacceptable no matter what else they do.
I see over there. And
yes.
Then, yes.
Question is, how do we fight this so-called delegitimization of Israel while not validating some of these really outlandish claims? So when you have somebody speak to you about genocide and about apartheid, how do you come back at that without legitimizing something that is so left field?
Okay. I'll give you an example. In the sense, how do you do it? It's like football. You have to play offense and not just defense, okay? And what do I mean by that? Defense, you'll never win a game. I think offense, you have to work with special teams. And at the end of the day, not to be stuck where the only choice that you have is to throw a Hail Mary. See, this is my football knowledge out of Washington, D.C. But the point that I want to make is, look at the answer to that is very clear. Apartheid, Israel. I mean, they should be ashamed that the way our neighbors, the way they treat women, the way they treat gays, the way there's, complete, judicial, if you look at it and you say, in the whole region, where would you like to be judged? By what judge? In what judicial system? Israel is such an open society that you can give many examples of not just, Supreme Court judges, not just ambassadors of Israel around the world, but in every place you touch, have we reached, is this now utopian and we are all equal? The answer to that is no. But by God, in 67 years, with all the challenges that we had around us, we can look back and say, wow, we have really created something amazing. And to end that, if you think about it, you can stand up and say to everyone, proudly, instead of oranges, we're exporting orange mobile phones. Instead of apples, we're designing Apple computers. We're sending satellites up into space. 6 other countries do that say shalom to very few other satellites up there. We're exporting, truthfully, gluten-free pasta to Italy, wine to France, and even snow, those snow machines to Sochi, to Russia. So this is an amazing, amazing society. And we are open, on a lot of issues, we are colorblind. Take the issue you asked me. When I saw, Jews from Ethiopia with their white gowns, okay, going into Hercules airplanes to be brought to Israel, the truth of the matter is that they looked to me as if they came directly out of a Bible book, out of the desert. The only thing I have in common with them, the only thing is the fact that they are Jewish and I am Jewish. And the fact that I see Ethiopian Jews in the Israeli Knesset, in judges, in the Israeli army, in every part of society shows me the integration process has started, which means that the children and the next generation is going to be, and we can come out and give that as examples all around. This is what Israel is all about. So in that sense, you can proudly stand up and say, take guidance, look at us. We are in light upon the nations every day with the challenges that we have. And like I said, I'm proud, very, very proud to represent Israel in the family of nations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Thank you. That was a very